No? Okay. Thank you. Cool. You want me to go test it? You should be good. Okay. All right. Thank you. Bye. Did they tell you they wanted this stream? Of course. If I would have forgot, I would say, oh man, I forgot, you know? But like I told Matt when he called it, it's the first I'm hearing of it.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thanks everyone for joining us here today. At the onset, I want to just say that this will be the first of many briefings we'll conduct with the press to update the public on the work our administration is doing to combat gun violence across the city. I want to say, beyond just being mayor, as a citizen of Cleveland and as a citizen of this country, I'm both saddened and angry at the level of gun violence we're seeing in Cleveland and across the nation. Right in our city, we've had 61 gun-related homicides year to date. We're seeing victims from ages 3 up to 101 years old. And our children are becoming victims of negligence and victims of thoughtless gun violence. Recently, a couple of weeks ago, the CDC did a study that said gun violence was the leading cause of death of children in this country. It's a shame. And as mayor of Cleveland, I feel paralyzed and handcuffed by the lack of real, comprehensive gun legislation in Congress and the fact that we have a state that doesn't give me as mayor the tools I need to combat the illegal trafficking of guns that plague our city day in and day out. I'm concerned about Senate Bill 215, which goes into effect on June 12th. I've instructed my law director, Mark Griffin, to examine any legal tool we have or any legislative pathway we have to combat Senate Bill 215. Yesterday, I released my statement as relates to House Bill 99. In working with CEO Eric Gordon and our school board, we will no longer allow any weapons. Once this bill is passed, we will not allow any weapons inside CMSD. And I'm urging every school district in this city, every school in this city, and every district in this region not to allow weapons in our schools, because arming our teachers with guns is not the solution. However, we are making progress. Just yesterday, Governor DeWine announced a $1.7 million grant to support our efforts to crack down on violence in our city. These resources will work to address youth, to help them not be involved in gang activities. The grant will also be used to purchase a national integrated ballistics network system to aid in solving gun crimes in the city. And those funds will also be dedicated to expanding the number of violent crime reduction teams we currently have right now in our public safety forces. We are also working with local and federal partners to truly adopt an all-of-government approach across the city of Cleveland to prevent crime before it starts. Programs like Midnight Basketball, we're looking to bring the 10-Point Coalition to Cleveland, a national a program that works with faith leaders to address violent crime. And then we've been also working closely with Youth Opportunities Unlimited and CMSD to make sure young people have productive things to do this summer once school ends. And then through the work I've been doing with Chief Drummond, starting on May 28th, we are requiring every officer working in the first and second shift to do at least 1 hour of walking the beat to make sure we have active presence in our communities across the city this summer. So I'm going to hand it off to Chief Howard and Chief Drummond to go in more details about the work that our administration is doing to combat gun violence. But we have a long road ahead. This issue will not be solved overnight, but know that we are working tirelessly in the Bibb administration to combat gun violence all across our city. Chief Howard.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Mayor, for your dedication to public safety. The City of Cleveland Department of Public Safety continues to work every day to make Cleveland a safe place to work, live, and play. Cleveland, however, like urban areas across the United States, has seen a rise in violent crime, especially in gun violence, in recent years. The safety divisions of police, fire, EMS continue to implement best practices and high-level trainings in order to continue to provide the best services to the citizens and victims experiencing critical incidents. Our first responders, and everyone has to understand that our first responders are dealing with life and death situations on a daily basis, and they're affected by what they see on scene and as they manage the scenes. Our first responders are on the streets. They're giving their lives every day, and this year has been of significant stress. We have seen 61 homicides, as the mayor stated earlier. 3 juveniles' lives were taken by senseless firearm use. We've had 495 assaults with firearms. And with the legislation that is coming, we urge every citizen to receive the proper training. If you choose to carry, get the training to understand the power of the weapon that you are going to be carrying. Get the training so you know what that weapon can do. We have seen 14 gun-related suicides. And as a veteran, suicide is something that's very personal to me. And if you know someone who is in mental distress, get them help. Call the Suicide Prevention Hotline at 216-623-6888. This is making Cleveland safe is a unified effort, and public safety can't do it on our own. We also have to talk about the disregard for our traffic laws. We've had vehicle crashes that have resulted in 17 adult deaths, 2 juveniles, 91 adults injured, 8 juveniles injured in auto accidents, and we've had motorcycle fatalities. We need everyone in the city to take responsibility for their actions, take responsibility for what they choose to do in this city, and help our safety members, our uniformed safety members, make Cleveland a safer place. I'll turn it over to Chief Drummond for additional details.
Thanks, Mayor, and thanks, Director. One of the things that's extremely important when we're talking about gun reduction and also crime reduction relative to the violence that's taking place is the relationship that we in the Cleveland Division of Police have with our citizens. I think that it starts there. It's not going to stop the violence, but I think it starts there to build that relationship. So that's part of what we're doing. The Mayor mentioned it before, something as simple as our park and walks, getting our officers out the cars, and that's primarily on our first shift and our second shift, to actually go out and engage with the community. And I'm not just talking about parks, I'm talking about neighborhoods, getting out their cars, walking up to people, talking to them, building that rapport, building that relationship. That's extremely vital, extremely important. That's part of, again, I think, helping to reduce some of the gun violence that's taking place in our community. We also have our Citizens Police Academy. And one might say, well, what does that have to do with reducing gun violence? I think it's extremely important that folks have a understanding of police work. And through our Citizens Police Academy, they have that ability to come and see what we do, how we do it, so they can have an appreciation for the officers out there and the tough job that they have policing this community. We also have what's called community-oriented policing. or CPOP, it's basically working with the citizens to find out exactly what the issues are, what the problems are, and working with the community to hopefully resolve those issues. And it's not just being directed by police, it's being led and primarily by the citizens who pretty much know how they want to be policed, and that's in cooperation and collaboration with our citizens to identify those specific problems. And sometimes, folks, those problems aren't necessarily the gun violence. It may be something much smaller, which can lead to other issues. So we can deal with those particular issues, smaller issues, collaboratively. I think we can resolve some of the bigger issues. Now, the mayor and director also mentioned about some stats and so forth. And I know stats for some people don't mean much, but sometimes we are judging our stats here in the Cleveland Division of Police and other places. So, as mentioned before, gun violence. We're talking about felonious assaults with firearms in our community. Right now, it's roughly, and the director already mentioned the numbers, but I'm going to mention them as well. It's 495. That's 495 folks that have been shot in our community with a firearm. 495. It's only 365 days in a year, folks. And we're only into June now. Just think about that. 495 people have been shot with a firearm in our community so far. 61 homicides. And those include older folks as well as kids. 61. So just unacceptable. Unacceptable. Gun seizures. We have about 1,054 gun seizures right now. 1,054. And by the end of the year, we'll probably double that. I'll probably quadruple or triple those numbers and so forth. So there are a lot of guns, and these are not legal guns that we're talking about, folks. These are illegal guns that we're taking off the street pretty much daily by our officers out there who are working very diligently. And also, the director mentioned about the traffic accidents and the fatalities that are taking place. It seems to me in the last couple years, and I actually had to ask my staff, is it just me, is it just an aberration that it appears to be a lot more accidents and more fatalities from 2020, 2021, now we're in 2022 and so forth. It seems like there are more reckless operators out there driving the vehicles and so forth. So I was charged by the mayor and to make sure that we increase our capacity relative to citations. And that's what we've done, and we continue. And one will say, and one can look up the stats from last year. I'm sure some people will do that, which is fine. We have it out there, we're transparent and so forth. And they'll say, well, you know, Chief, you're talking about citations, the importance of it. The mayor is telling you to make sure that you do that, and we are. We have a lot of responsibilities, but traffic enforcement is just equally as important. And so far, we've issued over 4,000 citations that include speeding, seatbelt enforcement, no driver's license, and other things. So it's over 4,000 that we've issued so far, and we continue to issue citations. And also, part of that, too, is the partnerships that we leverage. We have our partnerships with our federal agencies. We have task force officers, that's Cleveland police officers, embedded with ATF agents, with FBI agents, with the U.S. Marshal Service and so forth, and that's extremely important. And why is that important? When you think about it, when we're targeting individuals, and we do, we try to find the most violent individuals in our community and target those people and pull them out of our communities, get them out of our communities, take them through the court system, hopefully through the U.S. court system, and hopefully they're convicted there and they're out of our communities much longer. That's why that's so important. So that's our partnership and leveraging our partnerships. We also leverage our partnerships locally with the Sheriff Department as well as the State Highway Patrol. And as you guys are probably all aware, we had Operations Wheel Down. And I'm going to give you some of those stats. I know you have them already, but we had 15, and this is just one day, 15 felony arrests, 30 citations were issued, and 15 vehicles were confiscated, 2 of which were stolen. And we recovered at least 2 firearms in that partnership. And our partnership with the State Patrol will continue. That's not going to stop. The colonel, which I have a very good relationship with, the governor, as the mayor has a tremendous relationship with him, they're committed to assisting us here in the city of Cleveland with our traffic enforcement, and also, really important, our gun interdiction. Our gun interdiction and so forth. Again, getting illegal guns off our streets. You know, like I stated before, we've had a couple of kids killed recently, and it's and I get a little bit emotional, so bear with me. I was working out the other morning, and you know, I was working out and you know, I had report, I get text messages and reports from my communications center about just about every shooting, every homicide, every accident involving our officers, our cars. So I don't get much sleep, let's just put it that way, because my phone is constantly going off. And what I try to do is get up early and work out. That kind of keeps me sane. So I get up early and try to work out. So my phone goes off constantly. And and when I do, I update the director, I update the mayor and so forth. So I get a message about a 10-year-old, you know, and that was shot. And that was early in the morning. And then, of course, I get an update that the 10-year-old died. So I'm reading about what happened and so forth, and you know, irresponsible gun ownership. We get a 10-year-old in the bed that's shot in the head. An innocent 10-year-old is dead now. So I'm working out, and I had to pause, you know. That's after I'm reading out, I had to pause, you know. I have 4 kids, I have 3 grandkids and so forth. I had to pause, and, you know, I'm going on about my business, working out. Here's a 10-year-old that's dead. His family life has changed forever. And I just, you know, life has to go on, and we all know that. You know, so as a police officer for 33 years, I'm thinking to myself, what can I do? What can we do collectively to prevent those things from happening? What can we do? And I'm telling you, as a parent, as a police officer, and primarily as a police officer, for prevention, there's very little I can do. There's very little my 1,300, 1,400 officers can do. That's individuals that have to take ownership and responsibility and have responsible gun ownership. You have to be responsible for what you're doing because it affects lives, obviously. You have the 10-year-old now who's deceased. Their family's forever changed. You have the person responsible for it, who's a relative of that child, who now has to face those circumstances, situations, and the consequences, associated with that. You know, there's a potential that particular person could be charged with reckless homicide. It's an F2, folks. It's an F2. Lives changed forever, sometimes because of irresponsible gun ownership. You know, I'm just deeply troubled by that. As a father, as a husband, as a grandfather, I'm deeply troubled by that. And I think society should be too, and our community should be too as well. Excuse me, I'm sorry. You know, while our officers, they do wear badges, you know, they're mothers too, their fathers, their uncles, their aunts, you know, and when they're on scene of these tragic events, it affects them. It affects them. Our officers are not robots. They're human beings, and they're affected by this. Just the other day, I received a call from our Employees Assistance Unit. 2 of the officers involved in that 10-year-old was also involved just 2 weeks prior when the 14-year-old was shot and killed. They're suffering. They're suffering. So what I do, we have wellness. We try to take care of our officers as well because, again, they're not robots. They're human beings. So we have to take care of them as well. So they're affected as well. They're going to continue to do their jobs, but they're affected and so forth. Senseless gun violence, absolutely senseless gun violence. You know, we have preventative, we do have some preventions. We have Eddie Eagle gun safe programs. It's primarily through our community relations unit, and they do that through the schools. But also, you know, Senate Bill, the mayor mentioned about Senate Bill 215. It's going to take effect next week. And I'm not going to get into the politics of it. That's one thing I can tell you. Again, being a police officer for 33 years, I'm not a politician. Not a politician by no stretch of imagination. I'm a police officer. And I'm going to police, and I'm going to provide service to the community. I'm not a politician, so I stay out of politics. But I urge individuals who are going to carry weapons to please get the proper training and understand the weapon that they have. I urge our citizens to do that in our community. part of also what we need to do is leverage technology to help us in gun violence reduction and so forth, and that's through our real-time crime center. We have that. We have monies that came from the governor to enhance our abilities and the capacity and capabilities with our real-time crime center. That includes adding more cameras to the city of Cleveland, which we intend on doing that. We work with our council members, our district commanders, to identify areas where we can put additional cameras in, and that's what we're doing. We also have ShotSpotter. Now, there are some folks that may not like ShotSpotter, but I can tell you in the 3-mile area that we have in the 4th District, we're seeing dividends. Our officers respond when they get a hit. It's evaluated, it's verified, and our officers, because they have the capability to get the detection in their zone cars, they get that and they respond immediately to that area where the gunshotting is pretty precise. They can get there, and part of their responsibility, if there are no subjects there, no suspect, is to get out their vehicles and look for potential victims, which means not just in that particular area, maybe in a backyard, or maybe in a field and so forth. It's part of their responsibility to walk around and hopefully find evidence. If not evidence, if there's a victim, and they've done that several times. I don't have the stats in front of me, but our officers have come on shootings immediately after shootings and actually saved several lives because all of our officers are now required and are trained for first aid, and they have first aid kits in all of their cars. So we're doing what we can here. It's a collaborative effort. I appreciate the mayor and the safety director and all the support that we have, of course, Commissioner Carlton, EMS, and their response to the unfortunate gun violence that's plaguing our city. But I can tell you with the Cleveland Division of Police, we're committed. We're committed to do everything we can to reduce the gun violence and provide a stellar service to our community. But it's important to understand, and I'll have to stress this, we can't do it alone. I think the director said we just can't. We need our community to assist us. We need your help to help us provide the best possible service to our community and also help with the gun violence and so forth. And I've said it before, and I'll continue to say it, and it's important to understand. Historically, police and law enforcement has been reactive. That's what we are. That's just the reality of it. And that hasn't changed. We try to be as preventative as we can, but we're reactive. Something happens, they call, we respond. And hopefully from our response, and hopefully with technology, if there's a crime is committed, we're able to solve those crimes and so forth from obviously technology, people in the community providing this information, so we can put that together and hopefully take people out of our community that shouldn't be in our community. But we respond after something happens. So, and again, that's not necessarily going to change, but we're going to leverage technology to assist us. We're going to maintain and build relationships in our community and so forth, so we can build that trust in our community so people feel comfortable and can trust us and give us information that'll help us solve some of these crimes that are taking place and take bad actors out of our community, which is extremely important. Take bad actors out of a community. But again, we're really committed to doing the best possible job we can for the community. I'm sorry I got a little long-winded and got a little emotional, folks, but it's important that folks understand that there's a lot going on in our community. We have to take care of our kids. We have to take care of our communities. We have to take care of our seniors. Thanks.
Commissioner Carlton.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor, Chief Director. I just wanted to provide some quick comments. For every traumatic incident, there's obviously a medical response that goes with it. And as the primary provider of pre-hospital care in the city of Cleveland, the women and men of the Division of EMS are intimately familiar with treating patients with traumatic injuries. We are fortunate in Cleveland to be part of a trauma system, a network that ensures that victims of violence and other tragic incidents are treated at the most appropriate emergency department, capable of providing the best care. Cleveland does have some of the best hospital systems. They collaborate together for the interest of our community. From treating the patient to the violent interrupters working at the hospitals, if you're not aware, they work very closely with the victims and their families. The impact of gun violence in our community is destructive, not just to the victims, our patients, but to our entire city. The Division of EMS has seen a steady increase over the past several years of death and injuries from penetrating trauma. We saw a 30% increase from 2019 to 2021 of severe trauma from penetrating injuries. This year, the most significant impact that we're seeing is children under the age of 18-year-old, our pediatric patients. The women and men of the division are trained, obviously, to prepare and handle all emergencies, and they work tirelessly to save our victims. From the moment they arrive on the scene, the victims become our patients become our family. When our caregivers are unable to change the course of a devastating traumatic injury, they now become caregivers to the family and friends that surround that victim. When a child is an unfortunate victim of gun negligence and violence, our hearts are broken, and they fight against the clock to provide emergency care and transport to definitive care. There are miraculous outcomes, but as we now know, there are very few. With all the training and education that we provide to take care of sick and injured, there's nothing that we can mentally prepare the women and men of the division for the reality of responding to a home where a child, and I say a child, as we've all said, has been senselessly shot, seeing the most innocent among us, the children of our community with injuries that are incompatible with life, as they lie sleeping in their bed or playing outside in their front yard. The acts of violence have taken an emotional toll on all the Division of EMS members. We are grateful for our employee assistance programs that provide assistance and help them navigate their feelings of hopelessness and despair. We need them to continue to be able to provide life-saving treatment to the victims of violent and senseless crimes. And I think it's important for everybody to be aware that it's not just the injury, there's all the aftermath that comes after it. Thank you.
We will now open up the floor to questions. Yes.
How will you prepare for what could be a violent summer when you're also battling staffing issues within the division? How do you retain officers and recruit them?
Yeah. Well, as I've mentioned before, throughout the early part of the first half of my first year in office, the police union has not been with a contract in nearly 3 years. We're in the process of negotiating over 30 union contracts with our unions across the entire administration. We are working as quickly as we can to be a good faith partner with our police union to make sure we can address the issues that we know are important to have a competitive and attractive environment to retain and attract good quality officers across our city. In the interim, I've instructed Chief Drummond to look at some additional recommendations like ball caps, like tattoos, like beards, like having grills at the police district headquarters across the city to give our officers some additional improvements in culture. But again, we're in the middle of negotiations. I'm not going to negotiate in the press or in the public, but know that I want to do everything I can as mayor to support law enforcement to keep our streets safe throughout the summer.
I have a question for the safety director. Do you know when and where the last joint training was between police, fire, and EMS in person to prepare for an active shooter?
So, when I came on as safety director, I came on and COVID hit about a week later. So I've been dealing with COVID. So the answer to that question is I don't know when the last time was. But I can tell you that that is something that we're working on right now. We're working on doing a tabletop exercise to prepare and familiarize each other, not just within the divisions of police, fire, and EMS, but also with our partners who would be impacted by such an activity. So that's something that's going to be happening soon.
But not tabletop. How about officers and paramedics and firefighters actually in person, in a building, preparing as if they were actually doing it themselves, not the supervisor sitting in a room?
Well, it's going to happen in phases. So the first phase is the tabletop exercise. The second phase of that is going to be the in-person training so that we can do some collaboration around there. As you know, we have South High School coming on as a joint training facility for police, fire, and EMS, and that gives us the ability to have a location where we can have such a training.
But there is nobody remembers the exact date for the last one?
Not at this stage. Thank you, Ed.
On top of that, there's been 11 mass shootings just over the weekend. Are we increasing security downtown and popular nightlife places where we're providing this weekend? Are we increasing security presences?
That's a good question. It's alarming the amount of mass shootings that's taking place throughout the United States. And what I've charged my commanders to do is make sure that we have a visible presence We also have specialized units. As you're aware, we have the NICE unit. We have a community relations, community services unit in all the districts. And we also have violent crime reduction teams throughout all 5 districts and so forth. So they're aware of the mass shootings. So they're going to increase, again, their presence not only in the entertainment district, but throughout the city.
I'm curious, with requiring every officer on first and second shift to go out and walk the beat, officers are stretched thin, there's a reduction here. Does that requirement apply to the district detectives and the specialized investigative units? And just generally, how do you make sure that doesn't take away from your ability to solve and respond to crime?
Excellent question. Excellent question. And when we mandated that, we take all that into consideration, that we're not losing any service to our community when we require the officers to actually park their cars, get out and engage in community. That's important that we do that because, again, that builds relationships, and it's important that we build relationships in the community. Our detectives are not required to do that. That's generally our uniform officers that include our community services officers. So, for example, it may not, if for example, say the first district is really busy in the first shift, but there is a mandate that we have a park and walk. That mandate can go to our community services unit and so forth. So we'll take them, not from the patrol section, we'll take those particular officers and have them go out for the park and walks and so forth. And each district also has community engagement officers. Those officers are also required to go out and also park, so to speak, drive their vehicles to a certain location within the city and get out and engage the community. It's not just walking. That's the key to understand. It's just not getting out and walking. It's actually an engagement. When I was the 5th District Commander many moons ago, one of the things I required of the officers was that they got out their cars and they walked. So I would go out with them periodically and do that. For example, we would park the car at 105th and Superior, and we'd walk from 105 and Superior northbound towards St. Clair, and we would stop in the stores and engage and talk to people. Kids walking down the street would stop and talk to them. So that's the expectation from us, and again, that's just building relationships. And it's important for people to see us, law enforcement officers, outside of enforcement and arresting, and that's why it's important that we do that and we build relationships, but we're not taking away from the response when someone calls 911 or the 1239 emergency number. Well, the mayor charged me to make sure, he did that a couple of weeks ago. He charged me to make sure that our folks are out parking and walking. A little more challenging and difficult in the winter months, as we all can imagine. But as it started warming up, the capacity started, the amount started. But we've had some form of that for years. Like I said, I was a district commander from 2005 until 2014, and we were doing park and walks there. So we're just increasing our capacity.
I was wondering if you could hear some of the most recent stats on the city's website has the number of arrests and the number of speeding tickets.
Yep.
Arrests specifically for car theft, drugs, weapons, down quite a bit compared to last year. And something that's been mentioned and opened in city council meetings is that there's a work slowdown going on among officers and including police. Could you sort of set that straight? Is there an organized work slowdown going on?
There is no work slowdown, organized or otherwise, with the Cleveland Division of Police. We expect our officers to go out every day and provide service to our community. If we find out that there is, then we'll deal with it accordingly, but there's no evidence support that. The numbers are lower than last year, and it could be a variety of reasons why they are. I'm not quite sure right now. The expectation is that we treat our citizens with respect and fair. And we don't have a quota that, you're going to issue 10, 15 citations. That doesn't happen. It's discretionary in nature is our ticketing. It's discretionary, so the officers have the ability to ticket or not. So there's no work shortages or slowdowns or organized or otherwise. Again, if we find out something like that was happening, we'll deal with it.
Chief, you mentioned that there were 1,054 gun seizures so far this year. The plan is to double that. Where are you seeing this happen? You mentioned that a few were during that wheels down enforcement, but is this mostly your task forces that are doing this or traffic stops?
That's another excellent question. It's all over. It's from our organized efforts through our task force officers, our CJIC, and many other specialized units. Through their long-term investigations, they're able to identify, again, bad actors who are selling illegal guns, execute search warrants, and we're able to confiscate that. We also I talked about our partnership with the State Patrol, and they're very good, and the same thing with our people, very good at identifying folks that are carrying illegal weapons, and we're able to confiscate that. And also, I'll be remiss if I don't mention our patrol officers. Our patrol officers out there, again, day in and day out, just doing a really good job, again, taking illegal weapons off individuals in the street, illegal weapons off of individuals in homes. For example, if someone's arrested for domestic violence, sometimes there's a court order to remove weapons from homes and so forth. So all those are part of the confiscation of firearms. Some are legal, most are illegal, and most of them are on people that shouldn't have those weapons.
And I want to close by saying this. It's madness right now that a majority of Americans support background checks, red flag laws, raising the age to buy a gun in this country to 21. So I'm encouraging everybody in this city to call their member of Congress, and I'm pleading Congress to take real action, particularly in the U.S. Senate, to pass some form of gun legislation. As mayor, I don't have the luxury of passing the buck to the next legislative session. Congress needs to act, and every citizen in this city and in this state should plead with the member of Congress to take action now. This is madness. Thanks, everybody.
Have you looked at what Columbus is doing using health orders to put in gun restrictions?
Thanks.
You got it.
We're all locked out.
Thanks. If you guys have follow-up questions, just feel free to email me, and I'll get them answered.